If I had known how this was going to turn out, I probably wouldn't have gotten so upset. But on the other hand, being a normal guy with normal reactions, I think I would have been upset anyway. Hey, Neil, I turned to the guy sitting behind the bar. I don't see you here very often. Oh, hey, Rich, he replied somewhat sullenly. I don't come to pubs that often, but tonight's an exception. He didn't look too happy, but then again, it wasn't that kind of pub. So, what I have to say, he didn't look happy at all. What's the matter, mate? I asked cautiously. Neil wasn't actually a good buddy of mine, and in fact, barring the occasional party, etc., I hardly saw him at all. His wife Judy and my wife Corinne, on the other hand, were in each other's lives, so I knew, or at least thought I knew, quite a bit about what was going on in their lives. It's okay, Rich, he continued pitifully, barely looking me in the eye. I'm not accusing you of anything. It's not entirely your fault. Huh? What? My fault? I had no idea what he was talking about. What's not my fault, Niall? I asked uncertainly, not wanting to upset him further. But instead of answering, he just sat there, resting his chin on his clenched fists in front of him and letting out a long, drawn-out sigh. Come on, buddy. What happened? I was genuinely worried about Neil, who was usually the life and soul of any party, but I was also curious about my involvement in his grief. Of course it's Judy, Neil told me. Her and that damn wife of yours. That brought me back in time. At that point, Corinne and I had been married a little over 10 years. I was just over 40 and she was a little older. It seemed to me that we were so suited for each other that we almost knew each other's thoughts. I can't say I was very pleased that some guy I hardly knew was talking about my wife like that. What the hell do you mean by making a remark like that? I said firmly, but without losing my temper. Come on, Rich, he frowned. Don't play innocent. You know exactly what's going on. What's going on? What the hell was going on? What was he talking about? I don't know what you're talking about, Neil, I told him, deliberately keeping my voice even, realizing how upset he was. Oh no, Rich, he almost spat out. And I guess you don't know anything about the Golden Flower either. I just shook my head in denial. I'd never heard of the damn place. It looked like a Chinese restaurant or something. I hoped he'd continue, but nothing came out, and slamming the rest of his pint down on the bar, he stood up, gave me a glare, and, without another word, walked out of the pub, leaving me standing still and my insides in place. What was that, Rich? Fred, the owner of the establishment, asked, approaching me. Hell knows, Fred, I replied. Better give me a pint of your best. I've obviously got a lot to think about. I sat and sipped my pint, pondering what all this could mean, and the only thing that came to mind was, of course, the least acceptable. But what the hell were Judy and my wife up to? What had Neil so upset, and why the hell did he think I knew about everything? And what in God's name does this have to do with a Chinese restaurant? I have no idea. Forget about it for a while. I'll ask Judy myself when I see her later. But I had a hunch it wasn't going to be that easy. Have you ever heard of the Golden Flower Chinese restaurant? I asked Fred, but he couldn't help me and had no more ideas than I did. I walked home that evening very puzzled, wondering what to say to Corinne, having no idea where the damn Chinese restaurant was, and wondering if I would get a truthful answer. Hey, sweetie, did you have a good day at work? Nothing weird, right? I guess I expected to find her in tears or something when I got home. So, I replied. Stopped for a pint of beer at the Red Lion. Good, she continued, smiling at me. You work hard and deserve a pint of beer now and again. Neil was there, I said as if in passing, and I'm not sure I noticed her tense up slightly. He seemed upset about something, I continued, and this time I couldn't help but notice the smile on her face disappear for a moment. What about that order you went after Rich with? Corinne asked, trying too obviously to change the subject. Any idea why he was so upset? I asked, getting back on topic. No, Corinne replied, looking away from me. You told me about the order. No, I didn't, I objected. We were talking about Neil. Corinne threw me a disgruntled look, said she had no idea why Niall might be disgruntled, turned and disappeared upstairs without another word. Well, the hell with him. What about my dinner? I guess that wasn't the most important thing on my mind at that moment. I chickened out. I knew it, and she knew it, but we didn't talk about it. I tried to pretend everything was fine and Corinne was fine. What a mess. What a bloody awful week. I was in denial, and Corinne? Well, I don't know. I didn't know then and I don't know now. I'm not sure exactly why, but I looked at all the Chinese restaurants for miles around and couldn't find one with a name like Golden Flower. I was too shy to ask her, and I admit it. You may think otherwise, but when the woman you love and adore seems to be hiding something from you, all you want to do is hide yourself. Believe me, that's the way it is if you love her enough. That Chinese restaurant you were trying to find the other day, Rich? Fred, the pub landlord, asked me as I sat dejectedly at his bar the other night, a week or so ago. Did you find him? No, Fred, I answered him. Looked through the yellow pages and everything, but there's nothing like it around here. Did you look in the clubs and saloons? He asked. Of course I hadn't. There's an establishment downtown with that name, he informed me. A little classy, I guess, for the likes of Rich and me, he joked. But from the looks of it, it's a place worth visiting. As you can probably imagine, this piqued my interest. I had to find out where it was. An hour later, I found myself parked not far from this place with dim lighting and a muted atmosphere. Wow. I half expected to be refused entry, but they let me in with no problem, even though I wasn't dressed for late-night dinners and lunches. But it was still early. I found myself in the bar lounge. What was that? Honestly, I didn't know myself. But looking around, I found it to be a pretty upscale club place with a bar, a small dance floor, a few private booths and everything. Just the kind of place you'd walk into to pick up a woman. Except they weren't there. It's a little early for the ladies, my apparently personal bartender enlightened me. They don't usually come in until 10 o'clock or so. I can wait, I told him. You bet, he added. I took a sip of my drink and contemplated what to say next. The decision wasn't too difficult. Does a woman named Corinne Walters still come here? I asked as casually as possible. Corinne, somewhat, he replied. What does she look like? Blonde, I replied, trying to remain calm, even though my heart was pounding like crazy. 5'4", nice legs, average build. Comes with a redhead? He asked. Probably, I replied, shocked that I'd hit the mark so quickly. Judy really was a redhead, and those don't come around very often. I nodded my head in agreement. Even though I was seething, I still tried to act calm. Yeah, he continued. Comes in on Wednesday nights and sometimes during the week after work, I think. And what does she do when she's here? I asked. Damn. Too specific. Not too straightforward. Too damn involved. Is she your friend or something? The bartender asked, stepping back a little. Just a friend, I confirmed, but startled him. And he retreated to the other end of the bar. Oh shit. It was a good 10 minutes before he came back to me, and surprisingly, he wasn't so friendly anymore. Another beer, please, I ordered and handed him a 10-pound bill. Keep the change. To say his eyes lit up would be an exaggeration, but I certainly had his undivided attention. This Corinne, I asked him, what does she do? What are she and her friend doing when they're here? We stared at each other for what seemed like an eternity, and finally he snapped. Is she your girlfriend or something, buddy? He asked. What are you interested in? My wife, as it happens, I decided to be honest with him. And I want to know what she does at night with her girlfriend. He backed off again, but the $50 bill placed on the bar, even though I held it firmly in my hand, came to light again. She comes in with the redhead, like I told you. They dance a little, talk a little, he informed me. The usual stuff? The usual things married women do in places like this? I nudged him. A lot of them are married, he agreed. They flirt just as much as unmarried girls, and sometimes even more. What about the two we're talking about? I'd say, he replied, hesitating before continuing. I'd say they're not much different from the others. So they're flirting with the guys here? I guess you could call it flirting, he admitted, lowering his eyes to the 50-pound bill still in my hand. And how far does that flirting go? To that, he just shrugged and stared at me with a blank stare. And I pushed the bill a little farther down the bar but kept my hand firmly on it. I didn't need to say anything more to encourage him. There's a lot going on, he agreed. You know, touchy-feely stuff. It happens all the time in a place like this. And what does that mean? I pushed against him, my insides knotted. Did they grope her? He shrugged, and I assumed that meant yes. What else? It was a question, wasn't it? And he remained silent, staring again at the $50 bill I still held under my arm. Holding it out to him, I let it go. Well, that was the big question. Some girls date men, he admitted. I'm not saying those two are against you, but I don't really follow what all my clients do. I've never seen them dating guys, but like I said, he left the rest without comment so I can read it the way I want to. Next chapter. I pressed the bartender, but he wouldn't tell me more, and frankly, the information I already had made further investment a waste of time. I headed home. Was it still home? Yes, but not like it used to be, and it probably never would be. Hi, honey, Corinne greeted me as I walked through the door. You're late. Working overtime? No, I replied as casually as possible. Dropped into the pub and had a pint of beer more than usual. It's all right, darling, she told me, smiled and walked over to me, holding out her arms for me to give her a welcoming hug. Was it all a coincidence, or did her sudden change of mood have something to do with my movements that evening? I couldn't believe the bartender had called her to warn her, but I still couldn't believe he was talking about my wife. I wasn't ready to be done with her yet, deciding I needed a little more proof. After all, he hadn't told me that she was leaving for other men, but he hadn't claimed that she wasn't. Still, that didn't mean I couldn't rock her boat a little. Find out anything about why Niall was upset that night, Corinne? I asked, still holding on to her so she couldn't break free. I have no idea, she replied almost too quickly, as if she was planning her answer. Why should I know? Judy is your friend, I reminded her. You go out drinking with her every Wednesday. I thought she might have mentioned something. Corinne made an attempt to pull away from me, but I held on tight, not letting her pull away and dodge my questions. She didn't tell me anything, Corinne replied succinctly. Judy wasn't hanging around behind Neil's back, was she? This was getting too much. How would I know? Corinne replied, trying to get out of my clutches. Said that, well, you meet her on Wednesdays and you never come home late. I just thought you might have noticed her walking around with some guy. Of course I didn't notice, Rich, she whispered. Why are you asking me questions like that? So you're sure Judy isn't having fun behind Neil's back on Wednesdays? I pressed her even more. Are you sure about that? Get off me, Corinne shouted, finally managing to push me away. Stop treating me like this. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't accuse you of anything wrong, Corinne, I told her. We were talking about Judy, not you. Why should I think you did anything wrong? The look on her face spoke 1,000 words, and eyes misting over, she turned and disappeared into the kitchen. Damn it, it was the truth. The problem was, I still wasn't sure it was true. Dinner that night went quietly that night, as you'd expect. I didn't accuse her of anything, and she didn't admit to anything. And for the next few days, we continued our unhappy existence as before. Wednesday evening came, and as usual, she got ready and went out with Judy. She was dressed no differently than usual. A pretty dress, not too short or too revealing, and a pair of unremarkable high-heeled shoes. She looked good. Very good. Exactly the way a husband would want his wife to be dressed when going out without him. I'll see you later, Rich, she called out to me. I won't be late today. I just nodded and went back to reading my book, wondering what time I could not be late. Usually she didn't come back until well past midnight, and by then I had gone to bed. This night I decided to stay up late to see what time she came in and what state she would be in when she got home. So Corinne got me. Around 10:30 I heard the front door open and my favorite wife walked in, fresh as a daisy. Hello, darling, she addressed me. I missed you, so I came home early. I stood up, hugged her, and told her that I'd missed her for the past few weeks. I missed how we were always together, how close we were to each other, and how things didn't seem the same for months now. Corinne cried in my arms and apologized for not paying attention to me, promising that things would be different from now on. That night, we made beautiful love together. It was the first time we had ever done that. Next chapter. So, where was this going? I was sure that for months my wife had been hanging around behind my back. I was by no means sure that she had actually gone far with other men, and frankly, I thought she probably hadn't. I didn't know for sure, but that's what I thought. But there was no doubt that she was acting like a single girl, flirting, flirtatious, and probably letting other men entertain herself. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to say I was happy about it. In fact, deep down I was beyond furious. But it was really hard on her and she knew it. I really didn't want to ruin our wonderful marriage, if not out of necessity, then to turn a blind eye to what she had done, just to get it over with. And it seemed to be over. Over the next 5 or 6 weeks, our marriage went back to the way it was in the early stages. Little smiles, little touches, and lots of love. The girls spent evenings together as before, but always went to bed before 11 o'clock. So, the story is over, you might think. Maybe not the best story, but with a little effort on my part. All the more so with a happy ending. Of course not. I should have known better. About the 7th week of the restoration of our idyllic marriage, Corinne kissed me when she came out to meet Judy for their night out. "I hope you don't mind, darling," she smiled at me. "We'll probably be a little later than usual. It's one of the girls' birthday." "That's okay," I confirmed, smiling back at her. "Have a good time." I watched as she nimbly walked out of the room, dressed in a simple skirt. She looked cute, and I couldn't help but smirk. Then I wondered. No. She had never mentioned any other friends before, but there was nothing mysterious about it. Or was there? No. Why did I feel a rumbling in my stomach again, the likes of which I hadn't felt in weeks? I don't know why, but I picked up the phone and dialed Judy and Neil's home number. I hadn't spoken to him since that night at the pub a few weeks ago, and I wasn't sure if I'd be accepted. "Hi, Neil, it's Rich," I greeted him. "Corinne's husband." "Oh, hi, Rich," he replied, not seeming unusual to me. "What can I do for you?" "Just wanted to see if Judy had left," I asked, not knowing what else to say and wishing I'd thought about everything carefully before calling him. "Yeah, she's gone," he replied. "She's meeting Corinne at the restaurant. Is it something important?" "No, nothing important," I told him. "Are you and Judy okay?" It was too abrupt, but he sighed and said they had worked things out, even apologized for being so brief with me that night, and I told him it didn't matter. I hung up the phone. A curse. A curse and an explosion. Had they really met at the restaurant? Then why had Corinne just had dinner instead of telling me 20 minutes ago that they were meeting at the George and Dragon pub? Maybe it was a mistake. It could have been completely innocent. I thought maybe it wasn't. After a bit of thought, I decided that nothing would go to waste if I did a little investigating. So I went upstairs, took a quick shower, and changed into casual clothes more suitable for a night out on the town. Half an hour later, I was already standing outside the Golden Flower, wondering if I'd been foolish, but determined to keep going. Another 5 minutes and I was already ordering a beer from the bartender. It was the same man I had spoken to earlier, and I waited for him to be free. "Seen Corinne and her red-headed girlfriend around here lately?" I asked, looking him straight in the eye. It took him about 5 or 6 seconds to realize who I was, and another couple seconds to notice the tenner I held in my hand. "No, buddy," he replied, holding out his hand to take the money from me. "Honestly, I haven't seen them in a while." I realized maybe I really was on a wild goose chase, but I sat down to my mug anyway and began to enjoy my pint, gleefully admiring all these talents. I wasn't offered change, so I guess he was telling the truth. I finished my pint and went to the toilet. Hey, come on, that's what men do. I came out of the toilet and… Shit. Shit. I almost ran into Corinne and Judy. Oh, shit. Not that I recognized them right away, but if they hadn't been so engrossed in the 4 or 5 guys surrounding them, we definitely would have bumped into each other. You're wondering why I didn't recognize them right away, aren't you? Come on, admit it. When your wife comes out of the house dressed seemingly well, and shortly afterward you see her looking like Corinne. Maybe I should explain. Corinne was dressed. Well, sort of dressed. Well, no, let's start at the beginning. It was a dress. I can't think of what else to call it, except that dresses traditionally cover the sensible part of the body of the woman wearing it. This one apparently didn't. Oh, come on. Perhaps I'm exaggerating a bit. Anyway, I had never seen my beloved wife in an outfit like this before, and it was a shock. I didn't know she had a dress like that, and Judy, the bitch, was a match for her. Corinne must have had time to change after she left our house. I wondered how she would be dressed when she got home. The guys were completely fascinated by the couple, and although they tried to stay out of their way, it was obvious that they liked the attention. "It's good to see you beautiful again," one of the men said. "Where have you two been?" said the other. "Join us at the table," suggested the third, and by this time I was furious. I sat in the background while various suitors approached them, took them to the dance floor, and tried to undress them. They almost succeeded. Well, maybe not quite, but the whole time Corinne and Judy were laughing and giggling, enjoying the various parts of their bodies being shown off to other men. I didn't. I'll be blunt, I wasn't laughing and giggling. I didn't enjoy it at all. I sat and freaked out while my wife and her friend flirted with anyone who approached them, and there was no shortage of attention. Cow bitch. This was a loving wife who kissed me goodbye in the morning and smiled lovingly at me as she left in the evening. A friend's birthday? Where was that damn friend? Next chapter. On the house. I looked up and saw the bartender. You know the kind. Sorry, buddy, he continued, but I was telling the truth. Before tonight, I hadn't seen that couple in a while. I know, I told him. I believe you. What went wrong? He asked, looking at me with some compassion. Her, I said, and we both nodded in agreement. I watched in disgust as my so-called wife fluttered from man to man with no regard for her married status. I felt nauseous and wanted to run away, but I had a better idea. After making my way through the crowd of eager men, I made my way toward Judy, paying no attention to what my wife was doing. She finally pushed some guy away with a laugh, and I slid rather nimbly over to her to take his place. Hey, handsome, she said to me somewhat inaudibly over the drinks she was getting poured by all and sundry. What do you want? As expected, she had no idea who I was and didn't even bother to look up at me. Hi, Judy, I said calmly. Did you have a good night at the restaurant? It took a few moments. It was amusing to watch it hit her. Good. That was all she said, staring at me with a shocked expression on her face. Do you think, Judy, that my wife might be more available to me tonight than you are? With those words, I stepped back, finding myself surrounded by a group of stroppy men, boyfriends, whatever you want to call them. And they all wanted to make the most of my wife and her friend, and they were all collectively happy to deal with me. That was the bartender. It turned out his name was Jerry, and my $50 and other money was probably the best investment of my life. Back off, guys, I heard him yell. Leave him alone or I'll have to answer for myself. What buddy? What buddy? Even though he was only a 50-pound friend, at that moment I needed him because I was about to be destroyed. Jerry deftly separated me from the motley group and directed me toward the exit. Stand back, buddy. While you're still in one piece, he wisely advised me as he guided me toward the exit. But what about me? I caught a glimpse of Judy urgently grabbing Corinne, plucking her from the clutches of some other Lothario, and yelling at her. When she turned to me, our eyes met for a brief, stunning, small moment. I saw shock. I saw disappointment. I saw the shame on her face. And then I pulled away. Even as I began to carefully pull my car out of the parking lot, I saw Corinne running out of the club. Some guy clung to her, trying to hold her back, and as I watched, she swung around and punched him in the face, nearly knocking him to his knees. She saw my car and ran after me, not hoping to catch up to me, but not wanting to give up either. It wasn't until 100 yards or so later that I saw her fall to the ground in the middle of the road, and as I drove off, I left her there, curled up on the pavement. Next chapter. Not an easy situation, not for me, not for her. Nah, she didn't come home that night, but around 12 o'clock I got a call from Neil. Hey, Rich, he began. Corinne's here to see me. So what? I replied. Sam. She wants to know if it's okay for her to come home, he continued. Tell her to back off, I yelled into the phone and disconnected the connection. I left the phone on the hook. Not the most pleasant situation, huh? What to do? I didn't really care. Friday night, I got home from work and found Corinne's car in the driveway. She'd gone home. But home to who? If things were bad before, then, well, you can imagine. Nah, she claimed she wasn't having fun with anyone else, and maybe that was true, but she just didn't understand. Why was life so complicated? It got even worse. After a few days, I found myself hating her even though I still loved her. I really didn't know what to do, except that I knew she had betrayed me more than once and more than twice, and I couldn't accept that. I couldn't trust her anymore. I needed to talk to someone. But who? I had no brothers or sisters, no close uncles, or even special friends. For the past few years since we'd moved into the neighborhood, it had just been me and her Corinne. Stupid? Maybe. I found myself going back to the damn club. Don't ask me why, because I couldn't give you an answer. All I knew was that all my problems seemed to come from there, and that's where I had my personal 50-pound friend. Stupid? Definitely, but it worked for me. You're not the first husband to be in this situation, he informed me. It happens all the time. But what am I supposed to do about it? I asked in desperation. He shrugged uncertainly and shook his head. He didn't seem to have any more ideas than I did. He stepped away and washed a few glasses, but returned 10 minutes later, Rich, he began, by which time we were on equal footing. Why not give her some of her own medicine? Turning to me, he nodded his head toward the other end of the bar, and I noticed a very attractive young woman sitting there alone. She won't want to know me, I commented. She can't be more than 20 years old. In my experience, Jerry informed me solemnly, that's not a problem. Besides, I'd guess she's in her early 20s, maybe even 30s. Do you think she wants to be picked up? I asked uncertainly. I hadn't had any conversations in a very long time. I'm pretty sure she's rich, he continued, just waiting for someone like you. Maybe she's married, I said, almost excusing myself, though I had to admit I was sorely tempted. I'm sure she is too, Jerry confirmed. Maybe she's waiting for her husband, I suggested, still cautiously. I highly doubt that, Rich, Jerry grinned, because I'm pretty sure the guy sitting in that booth in the blue top is her husband. What? You heard me, he replied. He came in about 20 minutes ago and sat over there, and she came in about a quarter of an hour later. She keeps looking at him, and his eyes are fixed on her. You're joking, Jerry, I hissed. What are they doing? Just having fun. I haven't seen these two before, but it happens all the time. A couple comes over, pretends they don't know each other, and the guy enjoys watching other guys hit on his wife. But what happens? I asked, amazed at what he was telling me. Usually nothing much. The guy does a few close dances and maybe even tests himself. Maybe a kiss or two, but nothing more than that. Occasionally, a guy might talk a woman into going on a date with him. Depends on the couple and how far they want to go. I looked at the young dark-haired woman and couldn't help but notice that she was definitely dressed for the chase. How far do you think she'll go? I asked the owner. Not very far, he estimated. She's too nervous. This is probably the first time they're doing this. I think you'll be perfectly safe, Rich. Have a little fun, but don't get too carried away. I looked at Jerry, marveling at how well he had caught my mood. I did want to have a little fun, but I didn't want it to go too far. But then again, that was why he was such a good bartender. Do you think she'll go for me? I was still hesitant, still nervous about approaching a woman I didn't know. Well, that young guy over there just tried to chat with her, but didn't get anywhere, he told me. She looked at the guy in blue and he shook his head. She probably didn't like him, but I think he's just too young. Maybe you'll get lucky. Damn it. Was all this really happening under my nose? Look, Jerry, I can't just walk up and say hi to her. She might tell me to back off. Jerry laughed, then told me to leave it to him, that he would walk over and give her a drink and tell her it was from me. How do you know she wants a drink? I asked. I'm a bartender, he replied with a smile. That's my job. Stupid question. I continued to sit while he prepared some kind of drink that I didn't recognize, and then stepped away to the other end of the bar. He offered the girl the drink. She looked in my direction, and I nodded my head in a friendly gesture. The girl took the drink, cast a quick glance at the blue shirt, and nodded at me, raising her glass in greeting. I was hooked. Damn it, my heart was pounding. I had absolutely no idea what I'd gotten myself into. Careful not to make a fool of myself by jumping off my stool, I approached the bar and said hello. Hi, she replied. Thanks for the drink. My name's Rich, I told her. Pretty original line of conversation, what? Hi, Rich, the girl replied. I'm Cindy. So far, so good, and I noticed Jerry discreetly give a thumbs up from behind the counter. Only then did I notice how nervous the girl was. She wasn't shaking, but it was noticeable. We chatted about this and that some more, and gradually she relaxed, and with her, so did I. We got along fine, and I asked her to dance. I'm certainly no Fred Astaire and all that, but I have plenty of knowledge, and she happily followed my simple instructions. A little stiff in my arms, she soon softened, and by the second dance was snuggling up to me wonderfully. Not too close, as you might imagine. Just sweet. It was nice for her. I wanted to kiss her, but the opportunity didn't present itself, and I just enjoyed the feeling of a beautiful young woman in my arms. After the third dance, she suggested that we return to our seats, and she herself went to the ladies. It wasn't until the blue shirt picked up her cell phone that I guessed what was up. She had gone to the restroom to call him. Maybe to ask if he approved of her? I really didn't know, although everything pointed to her approving, and I hoped he did too. That was confirmed when Cindy returned, smiled at me, and walked over, climbing onto a stool. What are you excited about? She asked when I could no longer contain my laughter. What do you think? I replied somewhat unkindly. As beautiful as she was, I wasn't about to make a fool of the two of them. To my surprise, Cindy slumped slightly on the stool, and I thought tears appeared in her eyes, and I regretted talking to her. I'm sorry, Cindy, I said finally. I don't want to upset you, but it's all a little obvious, you know? Listen to me. I'm speaking as a sophisticated know-it-all man about town. Jerry had explained it all to me half an hour before, and I was quite innocent then. I don't know what you're talking about, Cindy muttered unhappily. So you don't know who the blue shirt is, I replied, but a little softer. Oh my God, why did I say that? I had brought her to tears. What's a man to do under these circumstances? Of course, I went over and hugged her. I'm sorry, Cindy, I comforted her. I didn't mean to be a nuisance to you. You're just like my damn husband, she sobbed, snuggling against my shoulder. Soon I was kissing her forehead myself, comforting her, saying tender words to make her feel better. Let's dance some more, I suggested, and pulled her along, realizing that sooner or later the blue shirt would realize that something was wrong with her. Once on the dance floor, she pressed her soft body against mine again and sobbed quietly throughout the first dance. What's wrong, Cindy? I asked when I felt her calm down. I'm not going to do anything you don't want me to. This isn't about you, Rich, she reluctantly informed me. It's that bastard Tom I'm married to. Over the next few minutes, I slowly coaxed the information out of her that what she was doing this evening was very much against her will. Her husband Tom had been urging her for 6 months to satisfy his fantasy of seeing her in bed with another man. She had been disgusted by the whole venture and had flatly refused. And then one night, Tom came home one night, heavily intoxicated with a couple of his friends. Did they follow you? No, she sobbed. I locked myself in my bedroom and didn't see Tom until the next morning. Said, you should have reported them to the police, I suggested somewhat inappropriately. How could I? She whispered and burst into tears again. When she calmed down again, she explained that the next day her husband had threatened her that if she didn't play along, he would invite his friends to a group fight with her as a prize. Eventually, after some discussion, she agreed to go to a bar and let some stranger pick her up since it seemed like a smaller step than going all the way. Why don't you just dump him? I asked. Maybe I should, Cindy replied. But I guess in a way I still am. Well, maybe I still love him. So what does he expect from you tonight? I asked. Oh, I don't know, she replied sadly. Maybe go out with a guy or something, I just don't know. Why don't we do it now, Cindy? She looked at me with an expression of disappointment, disbelief, even horror. I don't know how to describe it. Hoped. Don't worry, I interrupted her. You're perfectly safe with me, and that bastard, your husband, will think you're obeying him. Reluctantly, she allowed herself to be led toward the exit, no doubt still unsure she could trust me. As we walked out, I caught Jerry's eye, and he looked at me in surprise. I'll explain everything to him later. Finding my car, we leaned against it. I told her to take her time and calm down and handed her my handkerchief to wipe her eyes. Thank you, Rich, she murmured. It was all the gratitude I needed. Soon, Cindy was pressed up against me. I hugged her machine. She raised her head to look at me, and we kissed. I was puzzled. Yes, of course, I wanted to get her into my car and entertain her. But what would that get me? Thoughts of my wife's behavior raced through my mind, and I was overcome with insecurity, even guilt. And then it was over, just like that. Then Cindy pulled out of my embrace and stood with a nervous smile on her face. Thank you, Rich, she repeated. It couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I confirmed, already half regretting stopping. I'd better get back to Tom, she muttered. He'll want to know what happened. What are you going to tell him, Cindy? I don't know, she replied. Probably whatever he wants to hear. I'll figure it out on my own. We looked at each other, Cindy probably pondering what would have happened if we had met before Tom showed up. I know we had. Can we see each other again? I asked. I'm not sure, Rich, she replied. Maybe it's best if we don't. It won't end there, Cindy. Tom won't stop, you know that. He's not going to change all of a sudden. I know, she sobbed, tears running down her cheeks again. I'm just going to have to deal with it somehow. At least give me your phone number, I begged. Maybe I can help. I can't, Cindy said. I can't. But maybe if you give me yours. That's how we parted ways. I gave her my number, and after one last kiss, she turned on her heels and walked back toward the bar entrance, leaving me standing still, feeling so hopeless and alone. One last look back, a sweet smile, and she was gone. Gone forever from my life. With sadness, I got in my car and drove home. I had my own problems to deal with. Next chapter. We can't go on like this. I'm not sure if it was a question or a statement, but either way, my wife was right. Life at home had become a total bitch. We studiously avoided each other, neither of us willing to make the first move. We didn't even sleep in the same bedroom anymore, and she only reluctantly cooked my meals. Okay, I agreed. What do you have to say about your behavior? Don't you dare talk to me like a little schoolgirl, Corinne replied angrily. I've told you many times that I didn't let any of them have any fun with me. Then what do you call what I saw you do that night? I demanded. What you were letting other men do, acting more like a whore than my wife. Damn you, Rich, she hissed. You're so kind. What's wrong with me having a little fun if it won't do you any harm? I've been a housewife all week, so why can't I let my hair down once in a while? Our reasonable discussion seemed to have deteriorated somewhat. Perhaps there was logic in here somewhere, but unfortunately I couldn't see it. So you think it's okay to let other men use my wife's body for thrills? Yes, why wouldn't it be? Corinne was almost yelling at me. It's my damn body and it's my choice. You haven't been too nice to me lately, so if you don't like it, you can go to hell. What if I act like you, Corinne? I asked, trying to keep my cool, trying to reason with her to get her to see sense. How would you feel if I went and started making out with some girl I picked up in some pub? You would, Corinne smirked. You're with another woman. You wouldn't have the guts, you pathetic wimp. If another woman hit on you, you'd run a mile away. Ah, that's a good one. I don't think this conversation is going anywhere, Corinne, I informed my irritated wife, trying to calm the situation down. Damn right it's not, you spineless loser, my wife yelled at me, completely out of control. I'm seeing Judy again tonight, and I might give you something to worry about. Look, Corinne, But it was no use. She turned angrily on her heels and left for her bedroom, slamming the door with such force that the whole house shuddered. Oh God, what was I going to do? I went and poured myself one of my signature brandies and sat in my favorite chair to wait and see if Corinne would calm down. I had no idea what she would actually do. I doubted I even knew my wife. Don't wait for me, Rich, Corinne said angrily as she walked down the stairs. I may or may not come home tonight. And I looked up, trying to reason with her, and was shocked. Corinne, my wife, was dressed like some damsel in distress. If the dress she had worn that evening had seemed revealing to me, what she was wearing now was close to disgusting in my eyes. 4 or 5-inch red high-heeled shoes. You look like a prostitute, I told her sadly. I'm not selling today, honey. I'll be giving back. You can't go out on the street looking like that. You'll get hit on. Go to hell, bastard. They won't have to. I'll propose myself. I suddenly felt very calm. I don't know why or how, but I felt calm. If you go out on the street dressed like that and with that attitude, Corinne, I told her in a level voice, we're finished. Our marriage is over. I won't be here when you get back. Gee, Rich, she continued to yell at me. You've held me back for years, and now it's my turn to have fun. I'm going to have fun with whoever I want to have fun with, and there's nothing you can do about it. Looking at her, I wondered where the love in our lives had gone. Not so long ago, this woman was the apple of my eye, and I was willing to do anything for her. I loved her to the point of madness. I wondered when she stopped loving me, since I couldn't believe she didn't love me anymore, and I couldn't understand the contempt with which she now regarded me. Okay, Corinne, I said, deciding to knock the wind out of her sails. Go on, then. Have a good time. Watch how you cross the road. What do you mean, Rich? Corinne replied, mouth ajar, perhaps realizing she'd led me too far. And that's all you have to say? No, just one more thing, Corinne, I added. Why don't you back off? Nah. Having said that, I stood up and went into the kitchen. Not for any reason, but just for fun. I leaned on the sink, took a deep breath, and waited to see what she would do, half fearing that she would actually come after me to apologize. But no, she must have thought about it after all, because 5 or 6 minutes later I heard her high heels click on the parquet of our hallway and then the front door slam. If she keeps this up, I'm going to have to check the foundation. That's it. Done. Packing my suitcase took longer than I had anticipated, but within an hour I was outside and sitting in my car, heading for the nearest hotel, where I knew my company had an account, and it didn't take me long to book a room. I only got a room for one night as I had absolutely no idea what my plans were for the next few days, let alone the future. I still didn't understand why I had left home. Why me? About an hour later, my cell phone rang, and upon opening it, I saw that it was Corinne calling me. I pondered whether or not to answer it, but sooner or later I had to accept it. Hi, Corinne. What do you need? Where the hell are you, Rich? I came home and you're not here. I said I wouldn't be here. It was your choice, Corinne. Don't be silly, Rich. Where are you? When are you coming home? Not anytime soon, Corinne. Get a good night's sleep and we'll talk in the morning. Wait, Rich. I want to... But I'd already cut the connection and turned my phone off. That stupid cow thought twice about her act and went home to make up with me. Or maybe she couldn't find any strange men to hang out with and gave up. How was I supposed to know? I left her for the night. Next chapter. The next morning I went to work, and of course I couldn't just turn off my work phone. By 10 o'clock, Corinne had called me 4 times and I had run out of excuses for the receptionist. So I talked to her and promised to meet her at home after work that evening. I can't say I was looking forward to it. I'm really sorry, Rich. I shouldn't have left you like that last night, she greeted me, walking over to me with her arms outstretched. And I certainly shouldn't have talked to you like that. I didn't budge this time, and when she came toward me, I ducked down and moved to the other side of the couch. She looked shocked. We need to talk about this, honey, she continued, following me around the room. I think you're taking things out of context. It's not as serious as you think it is. I suppose some of it amused you, though? That caught her off guard. She hesitated, perhaps contemplating whether to lie, but honestly, she admitted more or less. Once or twice, maybe, Corinne finally admitted, unable to meet my gaze. Okay, Corinne, I demanded. What was it, one of them or two? She just stared at me dumbfounded, not knowing what to say. Well, one or two? I prodded her. And exactly how many times each? Well, maybe a little more than two, honey. But I didn't let it happen very often, I promise you. She didn't like this line of conversation and tried to change the subject. I toyed with her for a bit, and then gave her a chance to speak up. How are we going to overcome this wealth? I let her finally ask. I don't want to live without you, and I'm sure you still love me. Funny wording for her comment, but I chose to ignore it. What do you mean, Corinne? I asked. If you come home, honey, I'm willing to compromise, was her first sentence. I'll go out less and maybe I won't dress the way I used to. I just sat there looking at her in silence. How about that, sweetheart? She almost wheezed. Do we have a deal? So you'll have fun not once a week, but once every 2 weeks. Is that what you're offering me? Don't be so rude, Rich, she threw back, an angry expression contorting her face. I promise I won't let anyone do this to me from now on. I've had too much to drink, and I admit I've gone too far. How about you don't go out with Judy at all? I suggested, shakily clinging to the hope that we could work things out. And if you do, it'll just be to a restaurant or a movie or something. Jesus, Rich, she pounced on me in response. Don't you trust me or something? You can't give me the slack to go out and have a little fun? She just didn't get it, did she? Go and have all the fun you want, sweetheart, I replied calmly. And I'll move into the spare room and you can do whatever you want. End of conversation. Why the hell should I be the one to move out of our house when she was the one who was wrong? That was the end of the marriage, but I don't think Corinne realized it at the time. Our life together continued as before, and even a little better. At least we talked to each other, and my meals didn't pass to me like poison. Corinne even started doing laundry again. That Wednesday, she didn't go out with Judy. What a wonderful wife she was becoming. A week later, I was at work, and then my cell phone rang. An unfamiliar number popped up. Hi, Chris, I answered. Hi, Chris, a woman's voice answered. This is Cindy. Can we talk? Oh my God. I can't say I'd forgotten Cindy or how nice she felt in my arms, but I more or less assumed I'd never hear from her again. My life was hard enough as it was, without her problems. Of course we can, Cindy. What can I do to help? Is everything okay? Okay. I'm partial to beautiful women in trouble. That's a little cheeky, Rich, she continued. But can I ask you a favor? Why do women do that? Why do they ask if they can ask you for a favor? If you say yes, then you've already half agreed to what they need from you, I suppose. Sure, Cindy, I replied. What's the matter? Told you I was a sucker. This is Tom, my husband, she told me. The story I told him about what we did last night pleased him for a while, but he insists I go even further. How much further? Was that a stupid question or something? He wants to watch me have fun with another man, she whispered, her embarrassment evident even over the phone. Wait, Cindy. I started to protest, but she interrupted me. No, Rich, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not asking for this. I wouldn't do that. I told him I'd go and do it with another man and tell him everything. It's not what he really wants, but it will take his mind off me for a while until I decide what to do. So what exactly do you want from me, Cindy? I was hoping you'd meet me somewhere public where he could see me leaving with you and assume the worst. You could leave right afterward if you didn't want to stay with me, and I'd go to an exhibition or something and then come home alone with some story. I wondered, poor cow, why do some women have to put up with guys like that? There was desperation in her voice, and what would she do in the end? How about I take you out to dinner, Cindy? I suggested. No sense in spoiling the evening. She seemed satisfied with my answer. So, I had purposely chosen Wednesday since I knew Corinne would be out with Judy. She left early in the morning in a very good mood and even made an attempt to give me a peck on the cheek. At least she was dressed quite soberly, though, of course, that's how she'd left the house before I'd caught her the previous time. I won't be late, honey, she told me. You'll see. It won't hurt you a bit. She smiled at me, and I smiled back. She still didn't understand, did she? She didn't even notice that I was getting ready to leave either, and I left shortly after her. Hey, Rich, a voice greeted me as I looked back at the bar. Holy shit. Cindy hadn't looked bad the first time I met her, but as I stood there looking at her that night, I was shocked. She wasn't just pretty, she was beautiful, and she was wearing a simply wonderful little blue dress. You look different tonight, I told her. Tonight I dressed for a man I really like, she informed me, smirking. The other night I was there in protest. Well, you look beautiful, Cindy, I told her. I'd love to take you out on a date. With those words, I leaned over to kiss her cheek, but she grabbed me and sank a beautiful kiss on my lips. Wow, I replied as we caught our breath. That was for Tom, she told me, gently pointing behind me. But if you really believe that, you're a fool. Discreetly, I glanced at her back and noticed the blue shirt. Only that night it was a brown sweater. It just sounded different. Let's have another one for his benefit, I suggested. And this time we hit it off, and I remembered how wonderful her slender body pressed against mine was. Super. Let's go, I ventured, quenching my momentary thirst. Where to? She asked in amazement. Does it matter? No, Cindy replied, suddenly serious. Wherever you want to go, that's where I'll go. It sounded like she was about to jump on the back of my trusty steed and ride off into the sunset with me, but in fact, we walked about 100 yards down Main Street to the Italian restaurant I'd booked earlier. Not as romantic, but very nice nonetheless, and we had a lovely dinner with a bottle of Chianti, talking and chatting like old friends. Can you believe it? I found a girl who is a fan of Arsenal, the best soccer club in the world. Her whole family were born and raised Arsenal fans, so what else is there to talk about? We had a good time and moved on to a bar that had recently opened in town, where I found myself dancing with the prettiest girl in the room. And then, what could be more idyllic and what could possibly go wrong? You guessed it. My wife Corinne walked in with Judy and a group of men. She was wearing the same dress, but the skirt was pulled up 6 inches and half the buttons in the front were undone. I looked at Corinne, then at Cindy, and wondered what I saw in my wife. She was beautiful, yes, definitely beautiful, but in terms of class and style, she just wasn't in the same league as Cindy. It was time to admit to Cindy that we hadn't even discussed whether or not I was married. What's the matter, Rich? Cindy asked before I could say anything to her. That woman in the band over there, I told her. Unfortunately, that's my wife. The redhead or the one that looks like a whore? Cindy asked, apparently in complete sincerity. Ouch, I'd hate to get in her face. Yeah, the blonde one, I reluctantly admitted. Poor you, she commented, not taking her eyes off Corinne. How did a nice guy like you end up with a slut like that? If a guy had said that to me, I probably would have slapped him. But in Cindy's presence, I just swallowed silently and kept my mouth shut. You know what her reputation in town is, I assume? It was Cindy's remark that caught my attention. So you know her then? I asked. No, but my damn husband Tom does, Cindy said accusingly. And he wants me to act like her. Oh my god. What a small world. Maybe Corinne hadn't told me the whole truth after all. So she's having fun? I asked nervously, feeling stupid for having to ask my interlocutor about his own wife. Is the Pope a Catholic? She replied. She answered. She answered. It wasn't funny under the circumstances, and Cindy apologized. I briefly explained my situation to Cindy, and the look in her eyes said it all. We both had our problems, didn't we? But I, for one, didn't know what to do about it. Let's go, Cindy said, lifting me out of my chair, and before I knew it, she was pushing me toward the group gathered around Corinne and Judy. Hey, gang, my companion called out, standing up in front of them. They all looked over at each other, and if any of them recognized her, none of them showed it. The only thing that could be said with certainty was that she completely outshone the other two women. Maybe you know Rich, she boldly introduced me. You girls want to know what a real man is like, not mess with these empty-headed guys. It wasn't true, and for a moment I thought I was in for a fight. I was ready, but I hadn't thought of Cindy, had I? Corinne, she called out to my wife, who stood, stunned, looking at the two of us. If you won't appreciate him, I will. With those words, she bestowed a smile on everyone, kissed me on the lips, and then took my hand and led me out of the pub with a waltzing gait. No sooner were we back in the car, laughing at the top of our voices, than Cindy's phone rang and I listened to the one-way conversation. Yeah, hi Tom, I'm busy, what do you need? No, Rich isn't here right now, so we can talk if we need to. Saying that, she looked up and winked at me. Yeah, I'm probably going to entertain him. She winked at me again. What the hell did that mean? No, I'm not bringing him home so you can watch. No, Tom, I'm not going to do that. I don't care what you threaten, Tom. I'm not going to do it. Well, screw you, you weird bastard, and don't expect me home tonight. With those words, she closed the phone and tossed it into the back seat. I never want to go back to him, Rich, she stated, in a more confident tone than I'd heard from her before. I have no future there. What do you want to do then, Cindy? I replied. Because I seem to be in the same situation as you. Is there some place we can go? Good question. How about Brighton? I suggested. Brighton, Cindy almost squeaked in surprise. You mean Brighton by the sea? Quite right, I confirmed, as surprised by my spontaneous idea as she was. I know a great little hotel, and I'll have a few free days at work anyway. Let's go, Cindy decided, and I turned left and was soon on the road to this famous resort, where we spent the next 4 days and nights getting to know each other much better. Divorce. Yes, Corinne and I divorced after 6 months, and she didn't argue much with me about our divorce proceedings. She remarried shortly thereafter, but that didn't last long either. I believe she has genuinely realized the mess she has made of her life, but also knows that the solution to the problem does not lie with me. Judy and Neil. They continue to live their lives but are no longer friends with Corinne. I see them occasionally, though Neil and I have never gotten along. Me and Cindy? No. It didn't work out. 15 years of age difference proved to be too much of a problem. In the end, I just couldn't fulfill my part of the commitment. Now she's dating Jerry, my former 50-pound friend and now my actual buddy. Turns out he's not only a bartender, but he's also half owner of the place, so Cindy will be well provided for. I'm happy for her. Tom, I have no idea. He just disappeared from the scene. I thought about introducing him to Corinne at one point, but why would I do that? Angelica? Uh-huh. Of course, you don't know about Angelique. Let's just say I met her at a tennis club I went to get in shape, and now she's the love of my life, along with her adorable 4-year-old daughter Sophie, who I consider more and more mine every day. And let's not forget Rich Jr., my own son, who will celebrate his first birthday in a couple weeks. Life goes on. Who said that? The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.